to episode 1 of Swordsmiths. It's not Nicole and Lee. I have a guest. Who is this guy?
I have no idea who is this guy.
It's Vier Tahanera from one of my best students and the lead coach of Forge Pioneer here in Manila.
Hello. Thank you very much, Lee, for having me here.
Now, this is going to be interesting and controversial topic today, because we're going to discuss the differences of sport fencing and HEMA, to which a lot of the HEMA world really thinks they're the same, but they're not.
Oh.
And the fun part is like, well, who's this Vier guy? Well, let's just look at his sport fencing credentials. First of all, his HEMA credentials, pretty good. He's a level 1 Blood and Iron instructor. He won 2 silver medals in his last tournament. So he's very skilled. His students fight very well. I know I'm fighting them here all the time. And he fights very well. So what's your sport fencing credentials?
Sports, okay. For sports fencing, okay, the highest accolade that I ever got was a gold medal in the Southeast Asian Games. And like a few gold medals as well for the Southeast Asian Fencing Federation. What else? I can't remember anymore.
It's really funny. He's really being humble, but he has at where he's listed at Valley Verde where we train. He has a list of like medals like this long at the in small print under his name, like showing him as the fencing instructor or Ortega's fencing team instructor. Mm. So he's really quite a humble guy. He won't tell you, but he has the 2 medals as well. You won silver and gold at the SEA Games, right?
Yes, that is correct.
For which discipline?
For saber. For modern fencing, saber.
So he's one of these rare guys who's like really good at both. And it's kind of an interesting way to walk in both worlds, because most guys you meet in HEMA who've done sport fencing are not very good at HEMA, and they're also not very good at sport fencing. And that's just like a fact. People get mad about that, but it's true. Vier's good at both. And that's a really rare line to walk, because I watch sport fencing and I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on. This guy watches sport fencing and he knows exactly what's going on. He watches HEMA and he knows exactly what's going on. So it's a perspective. I brought him on to share a lot more of his experiences. He right now coaches kids. One of the students he coaches here and there was Nico, which is RG's kid.
Yes.
He did pretty good yesterday, didn't he?
Oh, yes, he did. He won a silver medal for the novice tournament. So, not bad. I think it's his first tournament in, 10 years? No, not 10 years, but about 8 years or something like that.
He's got a good coach. So, it goes a long way. So when we start talking about the differences we see in sport fencing, let's look at some rules. For the people who don't know anything about sport fencing, right? Explain key rules which don't work for you, in your opinion, martial arts, but are staples in sport fencing.
Okay. I just want to point out that the objective for sport fencing is to touch, not really hit, but touch. So for the equipment, for example, for people who do not know what sport fencing is, okay, the sport fencing, we call it the Olympic sport fencing. There are only 3 weapons that are involved. So we have the foil, épée, and saber. Now, each of the weapons have their own set of rules. For example, foil and épée are thrusting weapons, so you can only hit with the tip of the blade. Saber, like this one that we have here, okay, you could thrust or you can cut with it. And each of the weapons have their own set of valid targets. So for saber, the valid target is anywhere from the waist up. For foil, it's only in the torso, so you cannot hit the head, arms, legs, not allowed. Épée, the whole body is a target. And there's this thing also what we call right of way. This is where the priority, if in case there are double hits, what we know in HEMA, like doubles, the president of the jury will determine who has priority over the other. The judge or president, we call it the president of the jury.
Okay.
So the president of the jury has the authority to say, okay, this person has a priority over the other person based on the rules.
Okay.
And speaking of rules, they have a thick book about the rules for each weapon. It's in different languages, by the way. So The rules are set, and they also change periodically.
Okay, so this is going to be interesting discussion because so we talk about right of way. We're seeing this creep into HEMA tournaments. You want to explain right of way before we get into it?
Okay, right of way goes like this. For sport fencing, we're now doing electric equipment. So if you get hit, a light will light up. It's either red or green, whichever side you're on. It pretty much says, okay, you got hit. As simple as that. Now, most of the time, if both lights light up either simultaneously or one after the other, that's where the right of way comes in. So which means whoever has right of way has priority. Now, this is how it goes. Whoever initiates the attack has right of way or has the priority over it. So if I attack first, if I initiate the attack first, even if you hit me first even if you touch me first before I touch you, I still have the point. Yep, because I initiated the attack. So the call would be attack, counter-attack.
So I couldn't counterattack you, really. So I couldn't.
You can counterattack me if I don't hit. The point will be awarded to you if I don't hit.
Okay, so I'll look at it from a martial arts perspective then.
Yes.
So I'll rephrase the question.
Sure.
So I can't attack you in your time because you own the time. Meaning that I can't use like a FMA term for a better word. I can't defang the snake.
You can defend it.
No, defang the snake. As in, your attack is coming from me, and I strike your arm.
If I counter you, if I don't get hit, then it's my point. It has to miss for it to become valid.
Okay.
If you hit me as long as you have the right of way and both of us hit each other, it's your point.
Okay, so what would be a double is then resolved by just saying this person has it. And how often do you think that rule is manipulated or that rule is misjudged by the director, like for better term or worse? I don't know the term you guys use. Something.
Okay, misjudge. Okay, it's more of an interpretation now of the judge. What the judge says goes. So I would interpret it. It's possible that I could interpret it one way. The judge would interpret it differently, and you would agree with the judge or disagree with the judge. Like in any sport, that happens. Now, but since the rules are written, so you could actually argue that. But at the end of the day, the president of the jury would look at the video. We have a video review as well. Would look at the video review, watch it in slow motion, then he gives his final decision. And
is there always video review, or is there?
Usually for international tournaments, yes. For the direct eliminations, yes, they do that.
Okay, so for direct eliminations,
correct.
So you could get screwed pretty easily with a bad like director. I'll use the term director because it's the only term I really know. Yeah. I'm not going to memorize this new term.
Or judge. Say judge. Okay.
If you had a bad judge, you could be screwed if the person didn't really know what the right of way was or was misinterpreted. If you're going to a limb, so if you had a group of tight matches into your direct limbs, right, okay, or pool.
Okay, here's the thing about it. If I'm going to talk about international tournaments, okay, there are qualifications to become a judge. So you have to go through. You have to be a fencer to begin with. So for you to be able to understand the game itself, then you have to go through seminars and actual presiding in a tournament. And then it's either you pass or you fail. So, and there are certain levels as well on classes of judges. Okay, for a class C judge, okay, you can only judge within this area, like this region. Or a class B judge, okay, you're allowed to judge in these types of tournaments. A class A judge, that's the one who you would see in the Olympics, in the World Championships, and those types of tournaments. So, and it's quite strict with the way they do it. So that's why all the countries who actually play fencing, they respect that, because the association, the federation, the FIE, the Fédération Internationale Escrite, something like that. Okay, so it's been set. Though there are rules, we follow it. Okay, the rules. And when I talk about the rules, they have the rules about everything, about how long the playing field should be, the type of equipment, how an international tournament has to be how it has to be run, and all of those things. So they have a technical director for that. They have a judge director for that. The whole shebang.
Okay, so it's very detailed.
Very, very. They've been around for more than 100 years. Okay, so they've gone through all the process to make this sport one very, very safe, and very organized.
So then we go back to the right-of-way rule, right? Which we're
Okay.
seeing creep into HEMA. And I personally don't like it. I've seen the way it works. I don't think it really works for what we're doing in the martial art.
Okay, I have to point this out because fencing is a sport. It's not a martial art.
So before we do anything else,
Yes.
that's a really good point. So fencing is a sport.
Yes.
And would you say then HEMA is a martial art?
I would put it that way, yes. Well, it could be a martial sport once we put rules into place.
So you say martial. So it can be a martial sport, or it can be a pure sport at this point.
If you choose it to be, yes.
But if we look at like modern fencing, it's a pure sport.
Pure sport.
Pure sport. So it's measuring only a specific set of variables.
Correct. Like in any weapon, like I mentioned earlier, like the weapons have their own set of rules. So if I play saber, I cannot use saber rules for foil rules because they're totally different weapons, totally different disciplines. And right now, the way it's happening now, people are now specialized for their particular sport.
Do the judges also specialize?
Oh yeah.
So a Class A saber judge might not be a Class A judge. No.
But for this one, normally for the FIE, if you want to become a Class A, you have to be, you have to pass through everything, and you have to know all three weapons.
Okay.
So they have to be at that really high level for you to be able to judge all three weapons.
Okay, so you'd be able to judge all three weapons for that.
Yes.
But so what kind of judge would judge only saber, for example?
Normally like a Class C or something like that.
Okay.
Like well, I haven't renewed it anymore, but I did pass a Class C judging thing. So,
You kind of know your way around it.
yeah, and I don't like judging.
Nobody likes judging. Let's just be clear. Yeah. Everybody watching us who's done any HEMA judging, nobody likes judging.
I passed the exam. I passed those things, but for saber, by the way, for the other two weapons, I flunked it really bad because I never played it. I never played the pay. I never played foil. Well, I played it play, but I never competed in those things seriously. So I couldn't say much about the other weapons.
It wasn't really your interest, was it?
Never did. Never was. So
I find that is interesting. So some people will only, like yourself, specialize in saber. Other people will specialize in foil or epic.
Well, some other people actually do three weapons, and it's fine with that. People are fine with that. However, since we have different rules for each weapon or three different events, it's like going, like one could be a sprint, the other one could be a marathon. So it would be very difficult for you to become a champion for both.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, that's how the sport is.
Okay, so this is where we start looking at, like, because we measure these variables to such a degree, it falls into the realm of pure sport. Where we look at like the ideal of HEMA, it falls in the realm of martial sport.
Yes.
And where the variables are a lot tighter. Whereas like longsword and sword and buckler, the only difference is being two weapon. The targeting is pretty much the same, and the rules might vary a little bit. Mm-hmm. But reality is you're still fighting for disablement or kill.
Yes.
Thus, it's a lot closer than, let's say, saber and like I think it says foil only targets the body, right?
Saber is a cutting weapon, so you could cut with it, so you could thrust with it. Foil and epee are purely thrusting, so it's like closer to rapier. But since rapier, you could slice and still cut with it. So
closer.
And the weapon is still, and the rapier is way longer than the regular fencing weapons. So
okay, well,
totally different.
That's kind of what I'm getting at is that like because these variables are so different. Like you said, the foil only targets the body, right?
Correct. Torso.
So it only with thrusts only.
Yes.
So that's really different from the saber.
Very.
So when you look at it, like this game is so much different than the foil. Whereas I look at sword and buckler or rapier, for example, like the difference between rapier and sword and buckler, like let's say rapier and longsword, probably the biggest difference in HEMA.
It's just the weapon.
And really, it's just the weapon. The targeting and stuff is
the same.
As long as you're making a kill, right? It's basically just changing the percentage of technique from cut to thrust orient.
Correct.
Okay, so really, when you especially considering the books and the rules, even the differences between sport saber and sport foil
Totally
are
different.
much bigger than what we would see from rapier to longsword.
Yes, I would say that. Yes, and because of that, and this is what I've noticed with that. If you're playing within the parameters of those rules, everything changes. Like the timing changes, the distance would change. Like my distance for saber, I have to be farther because I'll be moving. I have to be far because I'll be moving much faster than if I'm playing epee or foil. Same thing with the timing. And let's say if I'm playing epee again, if I'm going to compare epee with foil, let's say, because there's right of way, I could game it like you could beat the blade first, so I could have the right of way and just do a simultaneous, or just touch you and just wait for you that. Epee, it's a different thing. So they put in another rule. They also put another rule, that non-combative thing. So if you're not doing anything, the president could call, okay, halt. Okay, last exchange, or in our case, last exchange, because you're not doing any actions. So they change it to make it more appealing for the spectators.
But realistically, it's so specialized that a lot of times, whereas you can see a valid hit, if the two people said simultaneous actions, the regular person will probably look at right away and not really understand it. Because I don't understand when I see it.
For foil and saber, yes. For epee, if the both lights would light up, both of you score a point. Simple as that.
So you could get up for 1 point, we'll say.
Yes.
And then just double your way to win.
Yes, you can do that.
Okay. That's I've seen that in HEMA tournaments, and I really hated those rules. And so that might be where it came from. I was like, why do I hate this rule so much? That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you could also play with the time with it, and run the time and stuff like that. That's also possible.
Oh, you can run time as well.
As long as if you know how. That's what's been happening with the pay in the past. So they would score a point and then they would not fight. So they just keep the time running until the time runs out.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they put the non-combative rule, because of that. Saber is different. For saber, the more aggressive you are, you have a bigger chance of scoring. So that's why the tournament, the bout for a saber would last less than a minute. It's that fast.
Now, just for you guys to know, like when I talk about this Vier, it's interesting because he really knows his sport, and I consider him in Blood and Iron kind of our rules ferret, meaning that when he laughs at this joke, because ferrets are pretty clever, and Vier is really clever at looking at a rule set and figuring out every weakness there. So when I throw out rules, I show him my rules, he will get back to me in a day and be like, I can break it this way, this way, this way. I have a rule I have put in my newest set of rules just because of Vier. Because I have to basically put a cage around the unbreakable cage around the rules ferret. Otherwise, he will eat your rules alive, like you did in Hong Kong.
Oh yeah, Hong Kong. Okay, the Hong Kong tournament, the Einhenher Cup. Okay, guys from Hong Kong. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I joined the games, but yeah, it was actually painful there. I came home with lots of bruises. Yeah. So the funny thing about one of the rules that they had in Hong Kong is that if you step out, okay, so the point is given and stuff like that. So I was thinking, so what I did in one of my direct elimination matches. So I was already in the lead by a certain number of points. When they called last exchange, I just stepped out of the ring, finished the bout. So, and people started. So the funny thing is, people started laughing. And they couldn't, and the judges and the organizers could not do anything because, hey, it's a valid movement. And after that, the other players started doing it as well.
Of course.
They copied what I did. So
and why did you do it?
One, because I'm already in the lead, and I don't want to risk getting hit with more points. So might as well, one, I wouldn't get hurt as much, and second, I could sacrifice 1 point instead of 3. Because if I got hit in a let's say just a hand hit, that's about, for the direct eliminations, that would be it's a times 3 multiplier. Okay. So that would be 3 points. If I just step out, that's only 1 point. So
this is what I'm talking about, guys. Like, if you ever want to find out if your rules have holes, you contact him because he will find those holes.
To add to that, and so the organizers, what they did, okay, we have a new rule for the next tournament day. Yes, it's you cannot do that. What you did yesterday, you cannot do that anymore.
That's pretty funny.
But so for the Hong Kong guys, by the way, I'm sorry about that. I do have to note that this was their first organized tournament. So they're really bound to make a lot of mistakes and a lot of things to be learning from the tournament that they organized. All in all, they did a really good job considering it's their first time. And yay! Now,
I like the fact you said that they're actually going through the footage and they're going to change the rules up in order to make improvements to the sparring they want to see.
Yes, and that's a good thing. Nice thing about what we have right now with HEMA, because the rules aren't set like what we have in fencing. That it's written that you cannot really say you cannot like the rules are set. Everything's like this and like that. For HEMA, whatever the organizer says or whatever the organizer would put in, that's what we have to follow. So very different. And at the same time, I don't know, maybe in the future, maybe I don't know how many years from now that we could actually have a pretty good rule set that everybody would agree to.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have that, though. I think that we're always going to have, like in MMA, they can't even agree on rule sets, really. Like, one's rule set's still different from UFC's. And Bellator and UFC more close, but, and PFL, they have some different things they do as well.
Yeah.
So I think you're always going to have some variant. I think variance is good. It's healthy for competition.
Yes.
As long as the fighting quality is good. And
I agree.
That's kind of where we're going with this. Because I submitted some other rules to you because I was curious. It's like there's a lot of sport fencing terms I don't recognize. I'm like what's attack and preparation?
Preparation to attack.
Yeah. I sent him this rule set from Russia, and I was like, okay. So my friend's like saying I should check this out. So I was like, check this rule set out. And you went through it. I was like, is this just like sport fencing rules applied to HEMA?
Yeah. And it will not work. It will not work. It's going to be really, really messy.
But the thing is, explain what you think will happen, because like you're my rules breaker, the guy who breaks the systems. How is it going to happen? What do you think will happen in rules like that?
Rules like that? Oh, I could complain a lot with that. For example, if you're attacking, and normally for HEMA, the movement, we have a bent arm.
Okay, yeah.
If I just slice it like that, for me, I could say that, hey, that's an attack on the preparation. You haven't attacked me yet.
Oh, what does that mean?
Which means you're preparing for the attack. The attack hasn't been established yet. Because in fencing, okay, if I'm going to go back to the fencing rules, for it to be considered an attack, the arm has to be extended first, and it has to hit the target before the foot lands.
Okay, so if I extend my arm here now, it's no longer that attack and preparation.
Depends. Okay. You could do that. So because you're already establishing that, correct? So that's where the right of I think you're going to put the right of way type of thing. So if your arm is already extended, you're already showing that you're attacking already. So even if you hit me first, but I'm already here, it's my attack. That's how the right of way works.
Provided the judge says that, right?
Yeah, but the way HEMA is going now, if I do something like that and you hit at the same time, it's usually called a double.
But in this rule set, they were going to go with whatever the right of way was. Essentially, it's right of way without saying it's right of way from what we've established.
The way it looks, yes, they could do that.
So meaning that as long as they favor one group or the other, or you get a bad judge who isn't as trained as the sport fencing judge you see.
Okay, the thing is, for fencing, it's clear. It's about touch. It's not about martial. It's not about hitting in a martial way. So it's very, very different.
Well, it's the same in HEMA these days too. In a lot of the Eastern European tournaments we're seeing guys wiggle the flat in and all sorts of stuff. We just watch, or just double hits, and then the judges kind of make a call. I mean, it's almost just like sport fencing with HEMA weapons.
I think that's where the direction is going for those groups. Yes.
And when you look at it, right, I don't consider it very good. Like HEMA, is it good sport fencing?
Not for me. I'll consider it this way. When I started playing HEMA, okay, and the thing is, when I started, I haven't had any lessons yet. I just played with the people who were actually, doing some sparring. So I would play and try doing fencing movements.
Okay.
So they would attack like that, and it was just a poke. And then I would get hit, and I would wonder, wait, it should have been mine because I hit you first. Yeah, that kind of paradigm. So I had to shift the paradigm, change it. Okay, what are the rules? What is supposed to be expected, and all of that. And I'm so used to the rule of parry the pause. Oh, he attacked me, I did a parry the pause. So even if he hit me first, that should have been mine. So that should have been my point because I blocked it first, I hit you back. Because based on fencing rules, if you parry it or you block it, the right of way transfers to you.
But it's not even blocking it, even if the blow. So any kind of touch to the blade would count as a block.
Based on the rules, not really, because you have to hit it at a certain part of the blade. So if you parry it in the foible, that's fine. If you hit in our case, a strong of the blade, if you hit a strong of the blade, that's an automatic parry. If you try to block it, or if you try to beat it, if you try to beat the blade away, you have to beat it with the weak side of the blade or the foible.
Okay.
For it to become effective. So those little things that they also have to look at.
Okay. So these kinds of things really won't work if we're going to actually treat HEMA as a martial sport. These will not work.
No, because fencing is based on touch. It's not about martial hits.
Because I've seen a recent tournament in Bulgaria. Like I was watching, it looked pretty pretty terrible, but it's just basically flat touches and stuff like that, and flat hits and wiggling around. And so I was like, okay, well, this was expected by the rule set. I personally think that minimum for HEMA should be at least having edge contact, but that's me.
Yeah, I agree with you when it comes to that. But again, if it's how the organizers want it, nothing we could do about it.
I see it as totally unwatchable.
It would be actually boring. If it's something like if people just wiggling like that. If it doesn't look nice, people won't be interested. That's how I see it.
That's a problem too, right? So we start looking and here's where things go. If you look at you guys have a rating system in sport fencing. We have this HEMA ratings thing, and I mean, I'm a big critic of HEMA ratings.
We can't do that. The fencing rating will work because there's a federation that actually has that. That's for fencing
with established rules.
Yes. And it's been established, it's been agreed on. There's a council for that who will talk about the rules and stuff like that.
And so there's a greater quality control in sport fencing.
Way higher compared to HEMA now. Oh yeah. That's why where HEMA is right now, it's literally like 100. We're late by 100 years.
Okay.
Literally.
And we're not even the same thing. So essentially sport fencing, right, has a higher quality control, which is easier to achieve as the variables are lower. Like the end game variable, meaning that you're making a touch to these body parts, and the goal is to make those touches within the certain rule parameters.
Yes.
And those rule parameters are clearly defined.
Yes. Those are defined, those are defined rules. If they have defined rules, then the athlete would know what to work on. For them to score the point, okay, we'll practice this.
So with because HEMA being a more martial sport, at least in its the ideal for it is when we see all these variant rules and then trying to create a ranking system around it, it really is nonsensical.
It will not work because right now with HEMA, we're playing with different sets. We're playing with different rule sets. There's no common denominator, so to speak. So how can you rank something that are not of the same caliber? Okay,
that's a great question.
No, at least for fencing, for example, the rating there is based by the federation. So and they count it by the sanctioned tournaments only. You don't count the club tournaments. You count international tournaments like for example the Olympics. They add the Olympics, the World Championships. They have the Continental Championships. They have the Grand Prix. So those are the things that the federation has created for you to gain more points.
So when we look at the HEMA rating for comparison, right? Because the tournaments vary in quality, They don't have established judging parameters at all.
Not at all.
And I would argue the HEMA judges are pretty low quality for the most part, right? Probably wouldn't even pass your C rating judge exams. So, and they can't really pass them because there's no established rules.
Exactly.
So then what are the HEMA ratings really measuring?
What, the number of wins? So I don't know.
But is it a win if you touch button one tournament and then land then have an after bowl tournament where the judge gives you a favorable score?
I don't know. That's why I don't follow the ratings. So I can't really I can't qualify that. Sorry.
I have never understood the HEMA ratings. Like I think people tried to explain it to me, and I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. Because there's no standardization, right? Like the lack of standardization. This is why I agree with you on strongly. It's like that lack of standardization you have in sport fencing. In HEMA, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Because it's not there yet. And I don't think it's going to be there for probably 50 years. I think we'll be both long dead by the time that we actually have any standardization to it, realistically. Or we'll have different HEMA like organizations to which they'll have different ratings to apply. So the general HEMA ratings, I would say, is pretty much worthless in a lot of ways, because you look at UFC, you look at Bellator, these organizations, they have their own ratings for their own fighters and their own rule set. Same with ONE, same with PFL.
Yeah,
and
correct.
Boxing has their own ratings for their combat sport athletes and their own championships. So I look at HEMA ratings as a totally, like, people get really obsessive with their HEMA rating. I have my HEMA rating up. Oh, no. this your bad judging affected my HEMA rating. It's like, buddy, everybody's judging sucks. Like,
even in fencing.
Yeah, I mean, but
all the sports, they have that.
They get like, they're like, oh no, my HEMA rating's gonna go down. You missed my touch butt. And when I say touch butt, I'm like, it's just like a tip tap like thing that is like totally insufficient, right? It's like, you missed it. Right? Like, yeah, well, I mean, do better. Like, we break it down like the way we would do things in a blood and iron context, forge context. And it's funny we say this because when we're watching club sparring the other day, we just had our juniors on the floor. I mean, like, nobody showed up because of the big event, and and parking and traffic in Manila. Traffic in Manila, guys, is a nightmare level thing. Like, you think in Mexico City's bad for those watching from Mexico. And Manila is the king of traffic jams. You want to find out what it is to 2 hours to get 3 kilometers in 2 hours? Come to Manila, and then try to find parking.
Parking.
So we all had junior students on the floor, and they're dedicated. They're working hard. But I can say it's actually interesting that we're getting more excited watching the juniors try to really commit to good, clean blows. We're seeing people work on covered thrusts and coming in hard at speed. We had that nice match between Luis and Matthew.
Yeah.
And it had us on the edge of our seats. Like, they were very even back and forth. And they're at mid-blow. Nope, no good. And then they keep going. I mean, that's actually nice to see that attempt.
Yeah, and I speak for Forge Pioneer when I say that, okay, it's all thanks to you guys. So you guys set the tone. You guys set that. And you guys have the experience that we don't. So you're bringing that into the club. That helped our club dramatically.
Now, you guys have great work ethic, so it's easy. It makes hard work easy, which is good. But if you look at, it's really interesting, like on the side that you didn't see because you're busy judging, because I'm seeing on the side, you can actually see people who are walking by stop and watch a match that's entertaining. And they're looking for the blow. They're looking for the clean, decisive blow. You can see these bystanders, civilians, right? Whatever you want to call them, right? Just spectators. A random person walking by in Valle Verde just stop, and they're watching the fight. And you see them, their head cranes forward, and there's an exchange and a definitive blow. And they're like, "Ooh, that was really cool." You see the head shoot back. You watch their body language.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things we look at this from a martial arts perspective versus a pure sport perspective. That people have an idea right here of what they already want to see with the sword.
Yes. Okay. Here's my input on that. If you don't know the rules of the game of a sport, you will not appreciate it. For example, I don't know the rules of American football, and that's why I never watched it because I never appreciated it. Here in the Philippines, basketball is such a big thing, so everybody here plays basketball. Rules are very simple, so even if I don't play that well, I get to appreciate the sport.
Okay.
So, same thing with fencing. Especially when we started, and fencing was not, even up to now, it's not as popular. at all compared to the other sports. Now, we had competitions in the malls. People would watch, but do not understand what was happening. They would see lights come up and then, oh, why did a person get this point and not the other person? Oh, that guy got hit. Why wasn't it awarded? And stuff like that. So, if people do not know the rules, then they cannot say, hey, he won, this person won because he scored this point, or he cannot appreciate it because they don't know the rules. If they don't, if you know the rules and you see what's happening, then you get to appreciate that.
So I think that's why MMA is so easily popular, because we know that you either going to be knocked out or submitted, and those are the matches that are the most popular. Yes. When it goes to judge decision, you see people go, well, is the fight good? Right? But they're not as interested. But when they watch a banger where one guy's KO'd or one guy's subbed, the rules at that point become so simple that essentially anyone can appreciate it. Is what you're kind of getting at. Yeah,
because so one nice thing about real martial arts, if you watch it, if one goes down, oh, this guy won.
Yeah.
As simple as that. And that's why one of the things I also appreciate, like the rule set that you guys introduced, like the covered thrust. So covered thrust would be like, it's like a knockout for us, right? So if you see it's something clean and it's a real hit, then people would want to see that. And as a regular spectator, oh, he got hit. Now, as compared, if you have people just hitting each other, like what are these yo-yos doing, hitting each other and hurting themselves? So
that is true. That's what spectators notice too, and they talk about this. We used to poll people and talk to them how they like the fighting in our finals when we were doing the Highland Games terms and stuff. And people would routinely say, "I like watching clean fencing." When we were running Combat Con and the fencing was super clean, was pretty clean there as well, we would have people walk up and say, "I can see what's going on. Like it's actually enjoyable to watch." Right? And I mean, how does a sport grow, especially combat sport, grow if the fighting's not clean?
It won't. If people are not interested in watching that, so I don't think it will grow if there's no interest in it.
Like, I mean, we're nerds of this sport, right? HEMA. But if I find a match unwatchable, what does the spectator, the guy who doesn't know anything, find the match like?
They wouldn't watch. They wouldn't even waste time with the matches.
Like, I'll be blunt. These after-bowl rule sets where guys are just smashing each other back and forth. I'm like, why am I watching this? It doesn't make any sense. You aren't going to take a sharp longsword upside the head twice. I'm sorry. People are like, oh, I could take a hit. Sorry, it's main character syndrome. You'll take a Principe to the temple once, and then if you survive, you're either going to love pudding, or most likely you're going to get a split personality, and then you're going to be sewing you back together in the box. Let's just be honest.
Well, I think that's, in my opinion, analyzing why right of way came in, that's because of that. People end up hitting each other so many times. So, okay, let's make a rule. Okay, let's make it somebody has priority if they hit at the same time.
But from a spectator perspective in sport fencing, I try to watch it. For me, it just looks like two people doubling most of the time.
Exactly.
So you'd have to really know sport fencing. You have
to know the rules. Yes.
And you have to really know sport fencing to really appreciate it. And that takes time to learn those rules. Correct. So a regular spectator can't really appreciate it without understanding the rules.
Exactly.
Because they're too complicated in that way for spectators.
Well, except for one weapon, which is the épée.
Okay.
All you have to do is just follow the lights. If it lights up, oh, he scored the point.
But it just looks to me as like two dudes hitting each other.
Yeah, but you would know that, okay, they're fighting, they're engaging each other. If it's a hit, you can tell. Oh, he scored a point. Yay.
But I always see two lights light up.
If two lights light up, okay. Both of them hit each other, both of them score. Simple as that.
But I just see it's like there's two guys, and like I can't distinguish the sword from the sport, unfortunately. I'm like, that's just two dudes just stabbed each other again.
What do you mean? I'm sorry?
It's like, for me, it's like two dudes just stabbed each other again. Like, I've seen two guys come in unprotected usually and just block, stab. Like, there's so many videos and like images where guys have the blade bent on one guy and the blade bent on the other guy at the same time and both lights up.
Yeah, then for a pay, then both of them score.
So for me, for me, it's pretty hard to watch, right? Because I'm not really understanding why that. I can understand who's scoring points. Now you've explained it. I just can't understand why they would commit to that action. Like, well, actually, I'm looking from a martial artist perspective.
Yes,
and that's difficult.
Yeah, if you're going to look again, we have to differentiate sport from martial art. Okay, for the sports perspective, you're after the points.
Gotcha. So
you're after the points. For a martial arts perspective, you're after a good hit, a good, clean hit.
Which gives us points, but the clean hit, is more important than the point score itself.
Well, as for true martial artists, yes. It's how you execute it, yes.
Okay. So in other words, so what you're saying is then us and HEMA, the perspective, the greater HEMA perspective, has to shift.
In my opinion, yes. We really have to differentiate the sport from the martial art. It has to be totally different.
But it's like for us to have I think the martial art and the sport have to come together. I look at it like this,
yes,
in a way.
Yes,
where it's like a martial sport. So we're essentially, otherwise you have your guys who are like, my blows are too deadly for combat. And if I had a nickel for every person who's me, oh no, I don't fight with longswords because I'm too deadly. I'm like, oh my god, you're too deadly to fight with a fader. Oh, okay. Right? Like, I mean, too old. I understand that. Like, one day that'll be me, but. I mean, you think about it, right? I had the too deadly argument with many different people, which is super annoying. What I'd like to see, though, is I want to see things a little closer to manuscript play. In other words, right now with a lot of the modern sport fencing HEMA fusion you see in Eastern Europe, it's honestly wiggle touch.
No.
It's wiggle touch flats and wiggle touch desperate hyperextended thrusts. And when you look at a manuscript, it doesn't say to do any of that. It says it talks about sword cows. Or you get the guys in Holland who just run ins working at each other. And it's basically sport fencing's works.
If you're going to do it, if you're going to do HEMA in a fencing style, just do fencing. It's much cleaner.
Yeah,
it looks prettier.
I mean, I can't really dispute that.
And, hey, I'm sure you've seen lots of pictures of fence, and in the Olympic fencing, with the pictures they look so pretty. The nice lunges and all of that. They look.
But I don't know what I'm looking at, admittedly.
Yeah, but the thing is, it looks much nicer now. And I'm basing it on other pictures I've seen of people doing HEMA in action. It doesn't look as pretty as fencing. Sorry about that.
So I would agree. It's true though. It's I can't dispute the fact that the athletes in the higher end of sport fencing are definitely fitter. That's for sure. And some chubby guy in puffy pants trying to do the same action just doesn't really look too good. Let's be honest. You're right in that way, myself included. I got to lose a bit. Hard to do in the Philippines, but but yeah, you see, when we look at it from that perspective, that part is very true. The aesthetic is in a sense broken. However, when I see guys in beautiful raised guard positions where the covered thrusts happen from ox, the wind bind movements or mutations from play thrust failed and move into his work or shield.
If it's executed properly, that would be really nice.
It is nice. Those clips I put on Instagram of guys doing that stuff. Sometimes our guys just have a moment of genius, but the stuff that's described in the manuscript is what we want.
Yes, that is correct.
I kind of look at it this way: if we're so deviated for the manuscript plays. Are we doing it? Are we doing the thing? Or are we just doing badly executed sport fencing with longswords?
Good question.
That's the problem, right? It's like I said, and the other thing too I see is a lot of guys didn't really succeed in the sport fencing world. They come into HEMA saying, "Oh no, we do that. We're masters and stuff." And this drives me mental. I have these guys are rapiers. I've seen these guys in Europe, and they're like, "I'm a master." It's oh yeah. Yeah, I'm a master. You're a master in sport fencing, sure. I mean, that's cool. But are you a master in HEMA? There's classical fencing, which is kind of between the two, and people are masters there as well. And I mean, and they try to say they're HEMA masters, which super annoying, but they do, and they're not. But
the thing is, with the classical fencing, they actually have manuscripts on how to parry properly and all of those things. Which I come from an old school. I come from old school fencing, so it's pretty much how to parry properly. The 6 different guards for a saber and all of that. And for me, when I teach my students, I stick to that. I stick to the traditional ones, more of the traditional way of fencing, which, in my opinion, really helps my students. Because my classes, by the way, are more recreational than competitive.
Okay. So when we're looking at when you teach sport fencing in classes,
Yes.
this is one of those things to look into as we go forward. So we've established that, like HEMA and sport fencing are obviously two different things.
Yes.
And probably should go their different directions.
Correct.
Right? And that way someone does sport fencing, they can do sport fencing.
Yeah, but the thing is, when I do that, I still use what you guys teach us in HEMA, which is based on the manuscripts, and I still apply that to my students for modern fencing. The proper body mechanics, position of the hand, and all of those, the angles, and it's very helpful for sport fencing. So there's, I try to bring them back.
Okay, so you're trying to make what's old new again.
Yeah, because right now, the way, especially when the Koreans came, let me go back to this. Okay, my good friend, my teammate, Gene Gonzalez, he always says that whoever innovates gets to win. Like, for example, I'm going way back in the 90s. So the Germans, they had this technique called the thrown hit, or call it a flick, for foil. When they attack, the tip of the blade will hit them back.
Fly fishing.
Yeah.
We call it fly fishing.
Yeah. So it's called the thrown hit. So when they were starting doing that, and they were scoring points, and back then, when fencers for foil, their stance would be forward because they want to cover the chest. So they're leaning forward, and that is how they played, leaving this part open. So when the Germans started doing that, they started winning. People started copying that, and they started figuring out, okay, how do we prevent that from happening? And how did they do that? They went back to the the classical fencing by having their back straight.
Gotcha. Not giving the target up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, in the more recent part, during 2010 and stuff like that, the Koreans started coming up with their own version of fencing. So they figured out, okay, how can we beat the Europeans? Because the Europeans are really strong, especially the Hungarians. They're really strong. The basics are strong, and all of it. The hands are very fast. So if we play that game, we're not going to make it. So what they did, okay, let's change it. Let's make our legs stronger. What they were able to do is to make the lunges really fast, really far, and they could reach really, really far. Imagine they could lunge for 4 meters away, and it'll hit you.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they could do that really fast. When the Korean team, Saber team, started going up against those Europeans, they were caught off guard, and they could not imagine, he's so far away, how can he hit me? Then eventually they went back. The Europeans went back to the basics. They went again to the working on the distance, working on their padded posts, the timing, and all of those things. So they had to go back.
This is one of those interesting segues we can look into this too, because you teach mostly kids, right?
Yes.
So we kind of look at HEMA, and HEMA has absolutely no real standard for kids programs, and I would argue that it's extremely underdeveloped for children's sport at this point. Yeah. So then, if we look at it, if you had a good saber teacher like yourself, right? I find myself when we ask about HEMA for kids here in the Philippines, I'm like, just go learn saber fencing with Vier. If you're just teaching fundamentals, right, and not at the competitive level, yes, could that be helpful for kids coming into HEMA in their teens?
Oh yeah, very, very helpful. Okay, my son, Badger, okay. He's okay. Just give a background. Okay, both kids got into gymnastics first. Okay, so they're really gymnasts to begin with. I bring them to class, let them learn a few fencing lessons. Now, Badger, my eldest, okay, he would join the classes mainly because it was fun. So he would just play around. While I'm teaching the student, he gets to learn. Oh, then he plays. Then he gets to play against other kids who are a bit bigger than him, and sometimes he would win. And he was just doing the basic movements. He would join a tournament, and I think he won silver in his first tournament or something that. So, and considering he only trains once a week.
He's pretty gifted though. He's a pretty gifted athlete. And once we came here, we got rid of once he took the idea not to just hit first and not double. Yeah. Once it doubling away from him, yeah, he's really improved.
Now if you notice the way he plays,
yeah,
okay, he plays like a fencer. He has the distance, the parries are solid, and when he reaches really far. He has a long reach, so he uses that as an advantage.
It's also a disadvantage too, though.
Yes, of course, there is an advantage.
He'll often land insufficient contacts or hyper. And now guys are realizing when he does that, he's actually getting caught off guard by the guys training more.
Yes,
and he's hyperextending. They're going back to distance management and countering them with it.
Yeah,
rapier, it's a real problem for him. Like he's learned that one the hard with Nicole and I, and the rapier, and you now with the rapier, because I mean the rapier is really a punish. If you're overextended at all in the rapier, you're punished.
Yeah, because right now, going back to the fencing, they do a lot of overextensions right now, mainly because it's just touch.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is just touch your opponent and then you score.
Yeah.
So that's why the overextension is really common, especially when they teach that. They try Okay, it's not that I'm putting down any of the fencing coaches now or anything like that, but it's more of most of the coaches here would train their students to win tournaments. It's understandable because it is a sport,
and that also increases their notoriety, which increases their amount of money they're going to make.
If you're going to put it in a business perspective, yes, because the more tournaments they join, the more tournaments they win, the more people would join them. Now, in my case, I would not train my students my focus is not to win the tournaments, but first to love the sport of fencing. They have to love the sport.
Okay.
Second is to learn the sport properly. How to do a proper stance, how to advance, how to retreat, how to lunge, how to parry. Those things, the basics. Because those basics, once they've mastered that, they can start winning tournaments. My daughter, Clea, she only trains like once, twice a week. And in my program, which is the recreational program, she would join club tournaments and she would win. Now, again, given that she's physically stronger because she is a gymnast, so
yeah, she's
physical she has the physical conditioning. She would train like 4 hours a day doing her gymnastic stuff. But when it comes to the basics, she has the physical strength to support that, to support the movements. That's why she's able to lunge properly. She's able to parry properly. What she's lacking now is really more of the timing of how the opponent plays now.
Okay.
And you could only get that if you play more.
Okay. So all right. So if we were looking at for kids, right?
Yes.
If they had a basic fencing recreation program, because HEMA is undeveloped right now, if we had to put a kid in right now,
no,
right?
It's not. Kids are not ready yet.
Yeah, not ready for HEMA. But they could pick up a saber, right?
Yeah.
But if you were taking an adult, they might as well just be in the HEMA program if they're going to be HEMA.
If they want, again, depends. Some adults prefer the lighter weapons.
No, I'm saying if adult wants it to be a sword fighter.
A sword fighter. Sword fighter instead of a sport fencer. So
yes.
Again, that's why
very different.
That's why I'm putting the distinction between that.
Kids, right? It doesn't really. They need a fundamental sport. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really matter if it's sport fencing or a good HEMA program, which doesn't really exist for kids at this point.
Not at this moment, but it would be a good foundation for sport fencing. Would be a good foundation for kids who want to transition to HEMA afterwards,
provided it was the structural.
Provided that they have the proper structure.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's basically essentially it's a buyer beware. In this one, you have to know what you're looking for.
Correct.
Okay, and when we look at like HEMA, right? If you're an adult, there's no point. Like I would argue, from what you've told me, an adult not having a HEMA program in the area, if they didn't feel like learning online, I would argue probably better off learning wrestling because there's grappling and you have to learn fueling. Yeah. And fueling is not something I see you guys do in sport fencing very much.
Not anymore. Not now.
Not now. No, not at all.
Before there was a lot of that, especially for foil and epee.
Okay.
So there were a lot of binds that were done a lot before. So that's why the classical fencing was actually there, working on the binds. Now it's more of who could hit faster.
Okay, so it's just basically like a pure drag race. So who's faster?
That's how it goes. That's how I see it now.
Okay, so right now, so things like fueling, I mean, you see that correctly expressed in jiu-jitsu and in wrestling. So I mean, I always tell guys my first choice always choose a martial art. If you want to get good at HEMA, if you're doing wrestling, MMA, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like I come from like a combatives foundation, and I became a good HEMA fighter. That's basically how it is. But I learned martial arts from like a pretty serious, hard martial artist. I mean, I was doing grappling and choking people out when I was 17.
Well, I started as a martial artist way, way, way late in life.
You're doing pretty good with it, right? Same with Nicole, though, right? So it is. Yeah. So it is. It kind of is what it is. So if we're looking at the greater scope of like kids programs and HEMA, so if there's no real HEMA program for them, throwing them in a good foundational sport fencing art, or throwing them in any kind of good foundational kids program,
or even even like jiu-jitsu, or Muay Thai.
That's true. It's Muay Thai too.
No, those martial arts are also very good for HEMA, in my opinion.
True. They are.
Okay, so sure. If kids get into that, because they'll also have the physical strength to do it, they will understand distance. They will understand, especially for jiu-jitsu, they would feel. And I took up jiu-jitsu, by the way, with one of our affiliate coaches way back when we still had the.
Was it Def Cat guys?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, the Def Cat guys. So Coach Lester, yeah, the best. Yeah, Coach Lester is really, really good with kids. So which is why I really enjoyed it, because when he teaches the kids really well, and those kids end up being world champions. So.
Well, though, you're good with kids too, so maybe you should start a kids HEMA program. You're good at it.
Here's the difference. For HEMA, we don't have as many tournaments.
So you're saying in order for kids program to be successful, we need more competitive atmospheres in order to build them up.
Even also for fencing, okay. If students or if athletes do not have anything to look for, or do not have a competition to look forward to, what are they training for?
Good point.
Okay,
so any kind of martial art, like I would look at Muay Thai as being like, especially the way they angulate. You watch a guy like Tawan Chai, or you look at a guy like Rod Tang. You look at the way they move, angulate. This is one of the things we talk about too. Is like this the linear versus circular movement.
Yes,
I'm seeing people like when I see HEMA, it should be in a ring, it should be in a square, something like a ring, square, doesn't really matter, octagon, I don't really care. But you look at guys like Rod Tang, you let them cut angles off and strike and use those like basically circular distance manipulation. It's beautiful to watch. Guys like Tawan Chai take angles like this. They're basically circle, angle out, strike. These are really nice things. We see these in HEMA manuscripts the same way, like how you execute any master cut is on those angles.
Yes.
And this is something that I see in the HEMA world, where they're essentially co-opting, like for a better word, a modern piece. They make it a little bigger for HEMA fencers, but it's almost like when you look at that, they're trying to execute master cuts in a completely linear format.
You can do that. Okay. Okay. The fencing piece is what? It's about 14 meters long. 1.5 and 2 meters wide.
So 14 meters.
14 meters. That's the maximum. Okay, so it started off as what do you call this? It was done on a stage.
Okay.
So people could see it. That's why when they do matches, they're on top of a stage. People would be in the audience, and that's why when they take off the mask and they just salute like that. So it's more of a show.
Okay.
So and they have to see it on 2D.
Okay, so it's 2D.
For them be able to see it, for them be able to appreciate it, you have to see it for opponent to move left to right, so you could see the movements much better.
Okay.
So HEMA is totally different. So it's more of you have to work on 3D.
So just like a kickboxing match, essentially, or an MMA match.
Correct. That's why for kids, I think learning Muay Thai, learning jiu-jitsu, that would really help them understand how HEMA would work. Because HEMA is both a striking and a grappling what do you call that, art.
There is grappling and there is striking. And I mean, admittedly, if I fight a guy who has a sport fencing background, I grapple him. And their builds are totally different for what we do.
Now, here's a difference I would see between people who have a fencing background and people who have the martial arts background. Usually people with martial arts background, they're not used to weapons.
It's true.
Okay. For fencing, distance management is key. If you don't have the proper distance, you're going to get hit. If you don't have the proper hit distance, you're going to miss.
It's interesting, though. You're right. Like in hand-to-hand martial arts, you do see that. You see good strikers. Like, I mean, I will say that, like, you see a guy from a boxer, you put a knife in his hand, he has good distance management, right? He just does. They really know the end of their range really well. Like, I learned knife fighting at a young age. I learned how to use a knife. And so my distance management from day one when I picked up swords was just like coming home with just a longer knife.
Yeah. So that's why the fencers have the advantage because they know how long the weapon is. They could make if there's an attack, you know how far you could go, how far it is. You can be able to parry that and all of those things, or how long, whether the strike will hit or not, they can tell.
But when you add the angular game into it,
it's different. I had to for me personally, I had to unlearn a lot of things from fencing. Because it was so different. It took me for 20. I've been doing this for more than 20 years. The proper lunges and all of that. One leg, my dominant leg is always in front with all the lunges and all of that. But when I had to do HEMA, I had to take it out. I had to unlearn it because this is a totally different animal. So up to now, I'm still having difficulty with that.
Yeah, it definitely hard for you. Put a saber in your hand is not as nice as when you put a rapier in your hand. That's for sure. It's funny because rapier and stuff for you has come a little more naturally.
Yeah, because I never thought
you never thought it would come naturally.
Because I never liked the play to begin with. So the thrusting part was never my game. So since rapier is both a cutting and a thrusting, so yeah, it was closer to me.
Yeah, so it's a little more home. And on the bright side, you've taken well to it because you're not actually just touching with it. You're working for the covered thrust.
Correct.
So you're making your thrust really count. I mean, we say in Blood and Iron that if the rapier ain't bending, you're pretending. So, I mean, but we're starting to see that. And people like watching it now. And like you're starting to see guys like Jericho, for example. When we put the rapier in his hand, he gave us a shriveled nose look like, ew, rapier. And now he's like, oh, I really like rapier.
It's fun and it's easy. Actually, for me, it's much easier. It's much easier to watch a rapier match compared to a longsword. For me now,
yeah.
Because the rapier is a bit more refined. The movements are more refined. If it's played properly, it looks really nice.
It does. That's the thing. If
it's played properly, and I should know because I played rapier. When was this in the tournament? And it's really bad.
Well, you just like honestly, right? We just looked at the rules. We're like, it's just like. Well, I mean, that wasn't even like really a rapier. Was that? Are you talking about Taiwan? Or are you talking about Hong Kong?
No, in Taiwan. That was how I played it was really bad. I just had to charge them. No.
When the rules are suboptimal, then ugly techniques tend to take over. When the rules are optimized for a weapon, better tech and the directors are really experienced, then good techniques will take over, which is what spectators want to see.
Yes.
Right. And so right now, we're still in the R&D stage of HEMA, and that R&D stage means there's going to be some tournaments have really good rule sets, which will bring out really good competitors, and some tournaments they're still learning.
Oh, yeah, speaking of rules. Okay, speaking of rule sets, like for HEMA, which is something I really, the afterblow, weighted afterblows. I'm not really that. I'm not a fan of it.
I think they're dumb. Like I'll just be blunt. Like the afterblow is the most abused rule in HEMA.
Yeah. For example, for the one in Taiwan, in my experience for the rules in Taipei, the Clash of Steel, they would use weighted afterblows. So if I hit you in the head, you hit me in the arm, then I get 1 point. So I would just keep on hitting the head, hitting the body, just for me to get more points. So if in case both of us hit,
But that's what any human does, right?
Yes.
Like you went to a competition, your fighting will fall to the rules.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because you can't get good quality fighting. And I mean, I watch all these, like, I've watched this Nordic League, like, weight after blow crap for a long time. And I would actually argue that it's the reason we're seeing the rise of sport fencing. It's essentially the rise of the sport fencing touch is because we've gone from one extreme of, like, essentially what I refer to as orc fencing to, like, just touch fencing. Because it's like the pendulum has swung so far the other way. We need that moderate middle ground. Right?
Yeah.
Where it's like you have good counters and encouraging useful devices.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it's really finding the middle ground for that.
So you really don't like the weight after blow either.
No. Because it's easily gameable.
It's like the problem then it becomes is who can hit harder. So you get a guy like myself who can hit really hard. And like Mikkel had this happen to him where he hit a guy and the guy just weights him back as far as he could. And that's the normal thing of who's tougher. Basically, it becomes a question of who's tougher. But you'd never do that with a sharp sword. You never let a guy hit you with a sharp.
Yeah, exactly. Again, if you're basing it by the number of points and stuff like that, so I'd go for the higher scoring. I'd go for the higher.
Then what do you do though if the guy's 6'7"?
What?
Right? There's a lot of guys on like in these European countries are like 6'7", 6'8". And like a short guys can't even reach them in the head half the time.
I don't know.
So really all you got is legs and arms. And they just wait. You hit me, I hit you in the head. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion unless you just break their leg. And then, I mean, that's just like not being very sporting at all.
Yeah, no.
That's just like being a jerk. But so, I mean, what are you going to do, right? You're going to get clubbed in the head by a guy, or a guy's going to one-hand blow you flat, which is all that happens at these tournaments too, from extreme distance. Because they don't care if once you hit them, they land. I think the other problem you have with the weight after blow is quite often the judge only ever calls the second blow, which is the after blow.
Yeah, which is actually sad sometimes. That's what they see.
I think Taipei's had one really good thing. I like Exile's video review rule.
Oh yeah, that was really good.
I think that was one of the smartest rules I've seen. I don't think it's applicable to pools in terms of time management, but I think for like anything from like semis and up is easily applicable.
But the thing is, for them, okay, I'm all for that. I like it when they have that. The only thing here that is easily you could take advantage. I took advantage of it so many times. Sorry, Exo.
He knows you're the rules ferret. Yeah. I mean, it happens.
Yeah, that system is quite easily abused because it's the thing I could always complain. If I complain and stuff like that, then if I'm right, then yay. If not, there's no consequence. So unless yeah. Now, if you change it a bit, and if I'm wrong with the call, okay, things will change.
Or he only gave the person a couple exchanges they can call. That way, you want to be certain if you're using that tool.
Well, in fencing they have that the video review. You can only for the direct eliminations and stuff like that. You're only given a video. You could request for a video review twice.
I think that's actually probably pretty fair.
But if you make it if you're correct. Okay, then you retain your 2 koi. Then you can still continue that. If you're wrong, okay, you lose your privilege.
Okay, that's fair.
Which is fair.
That's not so bad. I mean, when we look at advancing our rule sets here, there might be something we look at more seriously, like having the video review. Because I like the way you did that. I thought it was really good. So I mean, so for your 2 tournaments you've been in so far, like the Anajar Cup, and you have obviously the Taipei tournament, right?
Yeah.
Clash of Steel, I think it was.
Clash of Steel, correct.
Yeah. So I mean, they're pretty positive experiences, and I mean, I think in Asia there's a lot of good stuff going on too. That's another thing to think about. It's like HEMA in Asia, people are really looking to improve. I think in Europe they think they pretty much have it figured out when really it's like not watchable. It's not it's mean, but it's true. And in North America, what I'm seeing these days is like Combat Con is totally unwatchable. Like the modern Combat Con tournaments, oh my god, I don't even want to look at them.
Well, nice thing about the people in Asia, the HEMA practitioners in Asia, the guys are really, really nice. And they actually wouldn't take it against you if you win or you lose. It's not about that, but it's more of it's common. I don't know, it may be cultural, but all of us would want to become better.
Yeah, I can see this.
Yeah,
Like it's a different cultural context where it's not only about getting your HEMA. It's not just getting your HEMA rating up. People are trying to get better.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm noticing as I'm talking to different people. It's like they're really serious about improvement, and they want the sport to grow.
Yeah, which is what I appreciate with the guys from Hong Kong and Taipei. And thank you very much for holding those tournaments.
And we got to mention the Shanghai guys too. They're really serious about improvement as well, and they're also not afraid to be critical of different things that they're doing incorrectly or things they're doing correctly.
I'd want to join that.
Well, I mean, you'll get to meet these guys because they're like Lee and crew are like awesome people, right? And just really good people. I taught their guys are very talented and they're hardworking. So I mean, when people start seeing the high end Chinese fencers come out of China, I mean, sorry, Europe, your time is over. People are really not gonna like that one. But no, there's some really high end talent in China. Having been there and taught some of these guys, there's some really good guys there. So I mean, that's a fact. And here in the Philippines, they give us a couple of years. This is going to become like an epicenter. So I mean, just the reality of where we see like our sport developing here in Asia versus how it's transpiring in the sport of fighting in North America and Europe. Generally speaking, there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking. Right, it's really going downhill, in my opinion, in the Western countries.
That's sad.
It is, but they have to kind of make a choice. Do they want the pure sport of touch, and really they should just do sport fencing then, in my opinion, or they want to go back to martial sports.
Oh, which I noticed also again, I could only base it on the tournaments I've joined because both of them are after martial hits.
Yeah.
So, which is really
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, but Exile, when I met him before, he's always been a pretty cool dude. So it's not like it's not a surprise. And his guy did really good in our combat comic run. He won it really cleanly, and it was just nice to watch him fence. He had some really good matches. And
well, one of the things why he had the video those iPads because he had a bad experience in one of those tournaments.
Yeah, I know. I probably judged him, but his fighting could have been better. Sorry, Exile, but it's true. I know. I rewatched the videos too. We don't do touches.
No, but for him, he wants to make sure that if you leave the tournament, it's fair, and you wouldn't harbor any bad feelings about the calls and all of that, which I really appreciate. By the way,
so talk about Exile, right? Like the thing that I noticed about Exile, he's a pretty good fencer, right? But one of the things with him, man, I think he's actually a better coach than he's a fencer.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Those guys from Varnak, wow, good job, guys. Yeah, especially the guys from the Rapier. It's quite clean for us. Again, it's from our experience. We got creamed.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen twice. We're coming, Exile. You better get your Rapier
we're gonna
game
get
up,
ready
buddy.
for that. I've learned Rapier already.
You better get your game up, Exile, because my Rapier. We're coming, buddy.
Yeah. So who are the guys who won there? You have Xiaofan, and you have Frank, and who beat me?
Yeah, well, they aren't going to beat you next time.
Yeah, get ready. Yeah.
Storm's coming, buddy.
And then the long sword tournament. Oh, John. He's really fast.
He looks good.
He is. He's really good. He's tall. He's lean. He's fast. Yeah.
He had a really, really nice semifinals match.
Oh, yeah.
See why he didn't take bronze. You did it all in that match. It was really good. Equal.
By the time I reached the bronze, I was tired.
I think that might be your best tournament match I've ever seen out of you, though.
Yeah,
I agree. Really good.
Yeah, but not taking away anything from Martin, who won the bronze. By the way, congratulations. He did really well. He beat me up.
That's fair. I mean, it's going to happen, right? Yeah, but you were just destroyed. I could see you gave it all. That was actually a really nice tactical match, though, to be frank. Yeah. And I mean, that was really good. That's one of the better matches I've seen in the modern era of HEMA. So I was pretty impressed with how you fought and how he fought. There's a lot of good fight chemistry.
Yeah. Okay, the Varnak group. Okay, the club. Okay, very good program. Excellent. I can't wait to play with you guys again.
Well, I just can't wait to see Exile again. It'd be nice to see him actually again. So that'll be nice too. So big shout out to Exile on the good work he's been doing here in Asia. So, but don't worry, we're coming.
Oh yeah. By the way, he was so nice because he knew that our club we needed more equipment. Especially the gloves, So he was so nice. Oh, we have our old gloves. He could have them, and it was very helpful for a club. So thank you very much.
Yeah, he's a class act, dude.
Yeah,
so
I know.
in terms of that kind of like leadership of his coaching, I mean, that's kind of what we want to see more of, and hopefully maybe his rules change a little bit to be more to our liking. But they're pretty good overall, like in terms of where rule sets go. Like they're definitely in the upper end. So maybe if you got rid of the weight of afterblow, probably would actually make everything really nice.
Well,
That's just our opinion on it.
Again, that's my opinion, and that's actually the very first tournament I ever joined. So
it'll always be my opinion. I hate the weight afterblow. As we've discussed, we to death. I mean, we just hate it. No, the other thing too is looking at like the other clubs coming up here. I'd say this is going to be a hotbed in about 5 years. Like it's going to be really high end fencing in Asia, and from Philippines up to China, I'd say probably going to be pretty good.
Well, for it, in my opinion, for our sport to grow, we need equipment. We need equipment is key.
The equipment's here.
Put it this way: it's not as accessible
here
for other people here. It's very hard to get it here, especially like let's say like the gauntlets, those things. The jackets here, okay, we have like only one local supplier for that one, so
they're okay.
It would have been okay, but it would have been nice if we had more. So most of the time you have to bring it in.
Like the ones I've seen you guys make here, they're okay. I would say they're like at best probably like sub-fen level, right, or sub-fen level.
Okay, here's my point.
But they're trying, which is good.
If I'm going to compare this where we are in HEMA right now, it's pretty much like how we were in fencing 30 years ago.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so back then we only relied on the European brands.
So really what we need is like basically what we really need, honestly, is Spec Asia.
If Spec could come here.
If we had Spec Asia, that would probably, because I'll be honest, right now, Spec's probably going to be the gold standard. Because kind of like Regenier is the gold standard of faders, Spec's probably the gold standard for HEMA gear in terms of accessibility, everything kind of broadened out. Although I will say the newer St. Mark stuff is really high end and really nice. It's just not as accessible as the Spec.
Well, if they open a factory here, that would be nice.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Oh, yeah.
But so if we go back to the sport, this is another thing where sport fencing really has an advantage at HEMA, everything being available.
Yes. I have to point out that, it's really the Chinese equipment that brought down the prices, making it very accessible for people to get into the sport. Okay, to put things in context, way back when I started, for me to get a full gear, it would cost me like about 25,000 pesos or something like that. And that was in 1990.
Okay.
And now we could get it for less than 10,000.
Oh, that's excellent.
So you could imagine if I'm going to put in like inflation and all of that, it's like what, 1/4 of the cost.
So if we look at accessibility, and this is a really interesting thing in terms of HEMA here in the Philippines, when you look at sport fencing here, because the lower level of protective gear, like lighter swords, etc., it's a lot more favorable in a hot climate. And unfortunately, the Europeans haven't really figured out yet that in order to make that as accessible here in like hotter climates with more people in a very large market, what we need is lighter jackets, more better ventilated jackets and lighter protection, which also means we have to decrease weight of swords. And that is something that people, I hate to say it, but like trying to explain to a lot of the Euros, like Regenier gets it. And so I think BB does too. But a lot of the guys are like, no, our sword's got to be like 4 pounds. It's like, yeah, but you need to have lighter gear. Right? Without the lighter gear, you can't expand to tropical markets. And there's a lot of human beings that want to do HEMA in these tropical markets.
In my opinion, I think those heavy weapons, it would work probably for armored HEMA.
Yeah. That's Buhurt, man. That's like a totally different thing. It's
I know.
Same as the Buhurt to HEMA is the same as sport fencing to HEMA. It's the same like difference.
Okay, so it's a different way of playing, different way. So. If we're going to do the HEMA, the unarmored HEMA, so to speak, it has to be light. It has to be safe.
I would actually argue probably if the longsword's going sub 3 pounds, and that way we can have more light jackets, right? We can have more small armor protection. People are also over armoring for HEMA, which is also a problem, right? Because then they don't care if they get hit. There has to be kind of that middle ground where they care they get hit. They don't want to be hit due to a pain reaction. At the same time, they also don't want a heavy sword because they want to hurt somebody. There has to be that kind of middle ground, which I don't feel we have quite yet. It's not dialed in.
No, again, we're just starting. We don't have the experience of what fencing already has now. Okay, so for tournament jackets, they use what do you call it? A minimum of 800 newtons.
But they don't even know why they use it. If you actually talk to Christoph about it, who's an engineer, he's going to think it's an adequate rating for HEMA.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not talking about for fencing because they had to use it because there were quite a number of cases that the blades would break and.
You're talking the one that you guys in HEMA had a sword run through them.
Oh yeah, for HEMA, I don't know if.
I mean, I had a sword run through me, but we tested on an old school spec jacket.
Yeah.
And broke the blade, had a broken blade and stabbing a old school spec jacket, and it wasn't even nuderated, and it's still like stop dead. So I don't really, and so when talking to Christoph about it, he's like, yeah, the Newton rating isn't really like that appropriate for HEMA. It's what we have, what people use as a baseline standard.
Yeah, because it's for fencing.
But I'll probably have Christoph on to talk about like gear standardization one time, just to kind of discuss with everybody. I mean, that's what we have the engineer for, of course. He's a brilliant, brilliant guy, though. So I mean, in all fairness to Christoph, that's kind of like when I want to know an engineering question, or I want to know a gear standard or material standardization question, it's Christoph on the phone.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap things up, we look at the.
Speaking of Christoph, thank you for this.
Oh yeah, just show the here on the table here. It's kind of cool.
Okay, so Christoph, thank you very much for designing this. Okay, this is an aluminum messer, and what do we call it?
Yes, it was a collaboration between Kalahi, which is here.
Yep. Yeah, we call it the KL messer.
Yeah, the KL messer.
Yeah,
it's pretty good actually.
Yeah, nice, light, good for training. It's a nice training tool.
Yeah, Christoph designed it. Kalahi produced it. Super awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the kind of cool things that are kind of coming out. So we look at we kind of tie this up between sport fencing and HEMA, right? That's basically our topic. We kind of went through a few different topics. What we need to do from a gathering is one, HEMA needs its own identity. It doesn't need to take from sport fencing.
Correct. We have to be totally, totally different.
And it can be different and be alongside each other. Just being a cousin, it's just not the same thing.
It's not.
So the thing we can take from sport fencing is probably that we need greater standardization in our weapons and our gear, as well as rules which promote more tournaments that give us more access to manuscript level techniques like master cuts and cover thrusts.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, as long as we have tournaments that are or rule sets that would promote more of that, and it is something that practitioners would prepare for. So, and like in any sport, you would prepare it based on the rules. So,
yeah, I mean, we're seeing like in Europe. I mean, sure, it's going to cause drama as Giannis's new tournament with rules heavily influenced from martial arts, and I'm sure that will definitely cause some waves. But it's interesting because it kind of needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
So.
The thing is, again, I have to inject like this. When it's really based purely on martial arts, it could be actually painful. Hey, again, this is what I've experienced this time from the Hong Kong tournament. Okay, yeah, they were going for martial, but the thing was, people were trying to go more for the grapple, and they're pushing people off the ring and all of that.
Oh, it was almost Booher level, though.
Yeah, it's kind of brutal. That was one of the most brutal tournaments I've ever joined.
I would actually argue it's one of the more brutal tournaments I've seen in HEMA. And I don't think that was by their original design. But I mean, this is when you're new. You're working towards something that is different. Yeah. You're trying something new, and you're going to learn from it, right? And they're willing to learn from it, which is really awesome. So I kind of look at it like, hey, guys, good try. And maybe some things succeeded, some things didn't.
Yeah.
But from some of the end matches, especially in the finals, got messier as the fighters got more tired.
Oh yeah, I didn't like about that rule set that they did. So they had to do 3 rounds, and best of 3 rounds.
Oh, it was brutal. And
like 2 minutes. If it were like first 10 points, that would be fine. That's easier. But 2 minutes of fighting.
And dudes taking breaks randomly and stuff. I mean, but they learn from it. They learn from it, which is good. And you can see they're interested in improving. So give them credit where credit's due. They're going to improve. Yeah,
I can see that they're going to improve. And I'm sure they've learned a lot from the first Einheimer Cup. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give credit. They want to try and get better. And that's kind of nice. Because a lot of guys are like, no, our tournament's great. But they aren't really trying to improve year after year.
Yeah, so and I'm looking forward for next year.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
So we go back. it's HEMA needs its own identity. Is really the thing. They don't need to chase sport fencing. They don't need to chase Boohurt. They need its own identity, and that identity needs to have some kind of tie to the manuscripts, i.e. technical skills that we see in the manuscripts that are high percentage techniques and occur often in manuscript.
Yes, I agree.
Anything else you want to add?
Pretty much that's it. I hope people get into this martial sport, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's growing here in Asia. So thank you, Vier, for coming on our channel.
Thank you, Lee, for having me.
If you want to learn some high quality swordsmanship here in the Philippines, Forge Pioneer. If you want to learn online, you got Blood and Iron. If you want to learn how to instruct, you know where to find us. Until then, signing off. Train hard so you can fight easy.